We're very excited to be here. So welcome everybody. Today, James and I are going to be talking about conversational AI. So AI is very quickly being adopted by many enterprise organizations, but we still find there's confusion and misconceptions on exactly what it is and how AI can be used practically in the contact center. And we've seen the use of AI-enabled virtual agents grow last year over 180%, and know that half of all organizations are looking to implement AI over the coming year. But where are they best placed? How do they add value into your business? And what are the questions that we need answering before getting started? So today's session, we hope to answer some of those questions. So let's take a look at what's coming up in today's session. So first of all, we're going to discuss some of the key differences between traditional IVR and IVA, intelligent virtual agents. What can IVAs do that traditional chatbots and IVRs can't? Then we're going to speak to a real live IVA, see one in action and hear the very natural experience they can offer. Then we're going to look at some user cases and some real examples. So common user cases, cost benefits seen in some real live deployments. And then finally, we're going to cover some of those really common IVA myths and misconceptions and hopefully dispel some of those and show you just how easy it is to get started with IVA today to drive customer experiences and real business value. So let's get started. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Angie. So if we want to understand how smart is our virtual agent, then we need to think about what we mean when we say intelligent virtual agent. So to do that, it's quite useful to compare against a traditional IVR. So let's talk about some of those differences. What can IVAs do that traditional IVRs can't? Let's explore the technical capabilities of IVAs and also look at the differences that these technical abilities make to the customer experience. So to start, let's remind ourselves what we mean when we say IVR. So it's interactive voice response. It's a machine. It talks to you and you respond. And that's usually by pressing buttons.
Dial 1 for a billing specialist. Dial 2 for speaking to an account representative. Dial 3 to reach the sales department. Dial 4 if you know the extension number of the person you are calling. Dial 5 to get your account status. Dial 6 to update your contact information with us. Dial 7 to return to the main menu. Dial 8 to repeat the message. Dial 9.
And on and on. I'm sure we're all quite familiar with having those types of experiences. I don't think any of us would have loved it, but we all know how it works. It's not fun. It's not easy. Just some kind of questions really for you to think about was, when was the last time you actually rang your own helplines to understand the experience that your customers get when they're getting in contact with you? And has anyone actually heard a good IVR other than the first direct approach of not having an IVR at all? If you've got any kind of suggestions on that, just pop them into the chat and it'd be good to kind of catch up on those a little bit later. So now that we understand a bit more around what an IVR is, let's look at the difference between IVR and IVA. So the most obvious, most important capability that kind of distinguishes a traditional IVR from an IVA is its true conversational abilities. And that's enabled by AI-powered natural language understanding. On the screen, you can see some of the traditional categories of IVR applications, sometimes even included direct-to-speech or word spotting capabilities, but a very different kind of leap through to this AI natural language understanding. But let's talk a little bit more around why that is such an important distinction. So why do we need this natural language understanding? Well, we need it because understanding conversation is really hard. As children, we spend years and years starting to learn how to understand what people mean when they talk. And any of you kind of involved in customer experience will know customers are really not predictable creatures. If you think about the number of different phrases, the number of different constructions that you can use to say the same thing, and then you start to add in synonyms, different words that have the same meaning, and then start to think about how actually even with the same words, the context can affect what they mean. Look at the word book, for example. Let's book a massage versus I want to buy a book. Same word means different things depending on the context. So if you're relying on traditional approaches, using things such as word spotting or looking for particular keywords or phrases, that will only get you so far. Natural language understanding is the key to being able to drive the customer's real intent, which is, what is it that they actually mean when they say, or what does it actually want to do? And you'll hear that word intent a lot as we talk about this, and that's because most people don't phone up a chatbot or a chat assistant to have a chat. They normally want to get something done, and intent is understanding what is it that they want to get done. So true natural language understanding is really key differentiator between IVAs, intelligent virtual agents, and traditional IVRs. And importantly, it's one of the key things that makes an IVA smart, makes it clever and intelligent. So natural language understanding is really important technology, but it's only the start of how intelligent virtual agents differ from IVRs. When people think of IVAs, it normally comes with a whole suite of capabilities that can be put together to revolutionize customer experience. So we take a look at some of these. It can include things like automatic speech recognition. So, using those kind of cloud technologies to accurately transcribe what people have said based on the grammar, based on the context, and using that either for transcripts or to feed that natural language understanding model. Then we've got things such as voice biometrics, where we can actually identify and verify the customer securely using their own unique voice print. Sentiment and emotion analysis. That's where we can analyze not just the words that people use, but how they say things to understand how the customer is feeling. Are they feeling anger? Are they feeling fear, joy? And using those to adjust the customer journey. Predictive engagement is something that can be driven through IVAs, which is where if we understand the customer's likely problem, understand their status, their areas of interest, you can actually then interact with that customer accordingly. And a lot of that is driven by the integrations with other systems. So integration tools, being able to talk to other platforms is really key to be able to build up that picture of the customer. And as well as pulling information on the customer, being able to pull in sources of knowledge, being able to pull in frequently asked questions to respond back to customers with, whether that's embedded within the virtual agent or whether that's drawing on external sources, a knowledge management system, for example. And the last kind of example here is about being able to take all of these great capabilities, but extending those out to not just voice, but all of the channels that you support. So whether that's text, whether that's chat, whether that's WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, etc. So as you can see, IVAs tend to come with a lot of great technology. But what difference does having all this great technology make to the customer journey? Let's take a look. So if you think about the IVR as just a simple kind of push button machine performing a task. So the task is effectively guiding the agent, guiding the customer through to the right agent. An IVA is more like a smart, flexible robot. These enhanced capabilities means that it can interact with callers in a completely different way to a traditional IVR. So as an example, a standard IVR, it's pretty dumb. It allows key presses or directed dialogue to choose from a fixed set of options. What that means, though, is that it's down to people to understand the machine. People need to figure out which buttons they need to press to get the right outcome. Or they can just try pushing all of the buttons and hope to get through to an agent. So if people need to figure out the machine, then what people need to be given is consistency. You can't keep changing the options around, even if you know something that could really help the customer. The great thing about IVAs, the exciting bit, is that IVAs kind of flip that around. So you can just ask the customer what they want. The emphasis on the IVA to figure out what it is the customer actually means by what they say. And that has a number of advantages in how you can actually talk to that customer. So if you look at the actual interaction itself, it allows you to move from a fixed set of menu options that are kind of painful or confusing to change. You know, within contact centers, there's often a really big chore to be able to update a menu option to something a little bit different, because we know customers are going to be confused. Through to open questions, just ask them, you know, how can we help you? Not only is that conversational approach, you know, it's easier for the customer, but it also then allows you to move from those fixed, static, generic call flows that are the same for every customer through to a flexible approach, which allows you to get people help faster. Do you want to know more about our brand new product? Hey, are you calling about your recent loan application? Again, IVR makes people do the hard work, which means you can't provide that responsive, tailored service. But with IVA, you can. It enables all of that. So now that we are no longer restricted to static, generic call flows, we're able to understand much more about the customer, because there's not much you can do with a customer unless you understand about them. So we can start asking ID&V questions, for example, using natural language. It can include alphanumerics, include natural inputs such as saying next Thursday. We can enroll customers into voice biometrics to kind of skip that ID&V stage altogether. And we can use our integration capabilities to pull information about that customer from various systems, CRMs, databases, etc. What this means is we can move from that generic approach to provide smart, dynamic, and personalized customer journeys. And then if we know who the customer is, and if the customer and the IVA can interact dynamically to each other through things such as text-to-speech and speech-to-text, then maybe we don't actually need an agent at all for particular types of inquiries. We can enable much richer self-service options, whether that's things like, you know, appointment booking or password resets or balance inquiries. And the final better experience enabled by all that cool technology is that we can offer experiences consistently across all of the channels that you are open to your customer on. You know, I'm sure we've all had that experience where we've been told, well, you can't do that via chat, I'm afraid, or you need to send an email in for that, or you need to ring up to handle that particular inquiry. IVAs enable that consistent experience across all of those methods. And of course, why is good customer experience important? Because happy customers. And, you know, generally, the happier your customers are, the more they'll want to kind of do business with you, and the better it is. So now that you've listened and heard me say all about the great technology that makes an IVA smart, I've got some questions for yourself, and we've got a poll question that will pop up shortly. What do you think is the most exciting capability around IVAs? Is it, for example, the voice biometrics for easy authentication? Is it being able to understand why a customer's calling, offering relevant options and having that predictive engagement with them? Is it simply being able to answer frequently asked questions through the knowledge integration? Or being able to open up that to more than just voice or more than just chat? Be really interested to see your results. And I see we've got some kind of coming in already. I think Nicole will give them just a few seconds more. I think we've got a good chunk of responses in, and very, very clear winners, actually.
Interesting set of data there, James. So leading by far is the predictive engagement. And yeah, I think I'd really have to agree with that. You know, more often than not, the menus we're faced with are getting longer and longer and more complicated, and so many options that none of them seem relevant to you. So yeah, I find that really frustrating. If somebody could just predict what I need and get me to the right place quickly, I think that would be top for me as well.
Go ahead and show the results.
Yeah.
There we go.
I was kind of surprised to see voice biometrics coming in, coming kind of last place there, only because it's something that's very easy to get excited about. I think it is great technology, but I find it's very applicable to certain use cases and not so applicable to others. So it just seems like there is more of a, maybe more of a realistic expectation of what voice biometrics can do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now that we've had some of that kind of input on what you think, what's exciting you most about the introduction of IVAs, and we've heard a lot around, again, what powers them. Let's take a little look and check out some IVAs in action. Explore the difference that they're making in the real world. And for this, it'll be over to you, Angie.
Thank you, James. So, first of all, let's meet an IVA. So this is Five9's new hire virtual agent. And just like any other agent, before you employ them, you would need to interview them and make sure that they're right for your business. So I'm going to call up our IVA and see if he's ready for a new job at Five9. So let's give that a go.
Hi there, I'm a Five9 virtual agent. If you hire me, I'll become part of your digital workforce. To see if I'm right for your business, you can ask me all kinds of questions, like, what are your qualifications? Or why should I hire you? You could also ask me about my great sounding synthetic voice. Go ahead, ask me a question.
What skills do you have?
I've got a lot of skills. I can understand and respond using lifelike text-to-speech in hundreds of languages. I also use natural language understanding to learn how to answer your questions. I can even authenticate callers with voice biometrics. Would you like me to send you an SMS with our solution guide?
Yes, please.
I was expecting you to say yes or no.
Yes,
Would you
please.
like me to send you an SMS with our solution guide?
Yes.
Would you like me to send the SMS to the number that you're calling from?
Yes.
The link has been sent. Do you want me to wait while you read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll wait right here. Simply say, okay, I'm back when you're ready to continue.
Okay, I'm back.
I hope you found the link informative. Let's continue. Ask me where I live, or you could ask me something else.
What kind of return can I expect on my investment?
Since IVAs like me cost around 10% of a live agent, we have a strong ROI. Even a small increase in automation rates can translate into millions of dollars in savings for larger contact centers. That's why we say a digital workforce can even fund your digital transformation. Would you like me to send you a link to our ROI calculator?
Yes, please. Yes.
Would you like me to send? The link has been sent. Do you want me to wait while you try it?
No, thanks.
Okay, let's continue. Ask me about what industries use IVAs, or you could ask me something else.
Why should I hire you?
If you hire me, I will become one of your most valued employees. I can help you reduce service costs because I only charge about 10% of a live agent. I can help you extend your service hours because I work 24/7 and never take a break. I can also give your customers a more conversational service experience. Talking to me is a lot like speaking to Siri or Alexa. Maybe you're wondering, how does a synthetic voice sound so good? Try asking me about that, or you could ask me something else.
Tell me a joke.
Why did the mathematician get fat? Because he ate too much pie. Try asking how I know when to get a human colleague involved, or you could ask me something else.
Do you recognize my voice?
I see that voice biometrics has been set up for the number you are calling from. Let's verify that it was you that set it up. After the tone, please say, I'm using my voice as my password, and then press the hash key.
I'm using my voice as my password.
Good man. I recognize your voice. Now I can tell you some information that is unique to you. You first set up voice biometrics in the last 24 hours, and I've verified your voice in the past. Thanks for trying voice biometrics. In our production system, you would now be able to access sensitive information and execute transactions like paying bills and moving money from one account to another. You can now continue to ask me more questions. Ask me about how virtual agents learn, or you could ask me something else.
How do you know when to get a human agent involved?
When you design an IVA like me, you decide when to offer the caller the option to be connected to a human. Many businesses have me offer this option when I don't know how to answer a question, or when you ask to be connected to a live agent. Ask me if I support barge in, or you could ask me something else.
I'd like to speak to an agent, please.
Sure. I'll have one of my human counterparts give you a call.
So, quite a long conversation there, but I think you'll agree it was far from the sort of rigid guided menus of traditional IVRs that we all know. It had a really natural feeling. It was two-way conversation. And we heard multiple things there. So we had it do simple FAQs. And that's really one of the most popular, ways that we deploy IVAs, to take those routine tasks off agents. But we also saw it sending links. So I got an SMS link to detailed information, whether that's a document or a web link. We had it do biometrics, so recognizing my voice, and in that way it can authenticate me and get me to my personal information. You can really ask it anything. It could have just been one of those questions, a single question, or it could be a full conversation like the one we just had, so covering multiple topics. And if the virtual agent doesn't know, it can gracefully take you to an agent. So we learn from that fallback process. We hear the common questions that the VA can't answer, and then we learn and build those into its capability going forward. So that was a virtual agent in action. Let's next go and have a look at see where they've been put into some real life deployments. So the first case study that we're going to cover today is COVID Clinic. So COVID Clinic are an organisation who were set up during the pandemic to deliver the drive-through testing sites for COVID-19. And towards the start of the pandemic, they were receiving about 20,000 calls a day. But that quickly escalated and they needed to get tests done quicker and quicker. So as the demand grew over a really short space of time, they went from 78 centres to 200. And from 20,000 calls a day to over 90,000. And they simply found that they couldn't keep up with that demand, and they were really struggling to find and hire and onboard agents very quickly. They also had a really outdated telephony system, and they had no visibility of why their callers were calling them, and not enough IT resources to manage what was going on. So they needed to do something quickly. And first, in a few weeks, they transitioned into a cloud contact center solution, and that gave them that initial detailed reporting of reasons for call. And the bulk of the calls they found, in fact, about 90% of them were general questions. They were where and how to get tested, the process of getting tested, whether their insurance was going to be accepted, the cost of the tests, and then, of course, there was the patients trying to actually book the appointments. So they quickly moved to IVA and they built a general FAQ, allowing patients to quickly get answers that they needed. And then they built an IVA to completely automate that appointment booking process. So taking the bookings, confirming them by SMS, and then sending them a reminder just before the appointment. So those combined IVA capabilities allowed them to continually scale and meet that continual growing demand that was put in front of them. And it freed up the agents, so they were able to have those much more caring experience and empathetic experience that were needed by the patients when they needed it most. And when we look at the savings, cost benefits here in 2021 alone, and this is still going, they had an estimated cost savings of over $2 million in that year. And post-pandemic, the great story continues that they're pivoting this service into other mobile and kind of drive up urgent care facilities. So using that capability to drive innovation in that industry. So quite a remarkable story. And over to you for the next case study, James.
Great, thanks. So, this is one of my favorite case studies, but maybe it's just because I like talking about pizza. So choosing your order should be the hardest part about ordering a pizza. But Pizza Hut had a very kind of segmented legacy IVR platform. Each store had its own series of menus, The stores themselves had to take time away from preparing the precious pizzas to answer calls from customers, where is my pizza, placing orders. And customers found it difficult to get through to their favorite store. Where is the number? How long do I need to wait to actually get through and get my question answered? So Pizza Hut introduced a brand new solution with Five9, where it started with a single number that can be called from anywhere in the country. It would be routed through to a Five9 virtual agent. The virtual agent then asked the customer the reason for their call, but also it asked for their current location, not say their home address, but their current location using natural language. And you could respond to that with things such as, I'm at the park at the corner of this and this location. We were able to then take that, transform it into text, then use integrations into Google Maps to be able to transform that into an actual physical address. And based on that, we can then route the call to their nearest store, or maybe even provide them with an order status update without speaking to anyone at all. And of course, we then would remember that preferred store for next time. But importantly, who then looks after this fantastic new system they've introduced? Well, it's hosted in the cloud, as you'd expect, but it's managed in-house by their own IT team using the kind of easy-to-use Five9 Studio interface. So the control, the updates, the management of it all continues to sit within Pizza Hut themselves. So with this deployment, they ended up with a single number across the entire country that is able to get customers through to their local store. It's able to do clever things using natural language, such as taking people's addresses, obviously providing order status updates. And as you said, they were able to manage that in-house, not have that locked away by, under a professional, an expensive professional services contract. And the impact of this, well, as you'd expect, the easier you make it for people, the better the customer satisfaction will be. The happier the customers are, then the more they will repeat orders with you, the more they'll want to look to you again the next time they're feeling hungry. So those are, we've heard an IVA. We've seen two real-world examples of how customers are using them. But these are just some example use case on screen now that show that IVAs are applicable to almost every company across all verticals, whether that's retail, banking, hospitality, healthcare. Common tasks such as whether it's the authentication and verification, taking that away from an agent and just informing them that the customer has passed. Whether that's taking payments, looking at balances, in retail, where is my order is an incredibly common task that needs to be performed, which I'm sure agents get a little bit fed up of responding to time after time. These are all use cases that can be satisfied with intelligent virtual agents. And as Five9 would be excited to explore with you what opportunities exist within your business to introduce this type of technology.
Thanks. So, as we move from this concept of traditional IVRs to the new smart IVA world, the benefits are very clear. So from the customer's perspective, no more confusing, infuriating menus, just speak naturally to say what you need. They're always available 24/7 on any channel, any time of day, and they can provide effortless self-service options for all sorts of tasks. From the agent perspective, we've got context of calls arriving, we've got automation, removing those routine tasks and avoiding, agent frustration and burnout, allowing them more time to focus on jobs that need the human involvement and creating more rewarding jobs. And from the business, adding in automation helps meet the customer expectations. It helps improve agent retention and it helps reduce operating costs. So why is it when we contact most organizations today, we're still experiencing these very impersonal, time-wasting and incredibly frustrating experiences? What is stopping some organizations from getting started? What we think is due to some very common misconceptions. So traditional IVR, is associated with so many negative experiences and clouds our perceptions of what the real benefits of IVA are. So we're here today to try and set the record straight on some of those misconceptions and myths. And to do that, we're going to start with another poll and put the question over to you. So what do you think is the biggest fear? What's the biggest reason that's holding organizations back from getting started with this technology? Is it because customers prefer to speak to a live agent rather than a virtual agent? Are you worried an IVA is going to prevent them from reaching a human if they want to? Is it because you think they're going to replace human agents? Are you worried virtual assistants are going to take over and put existing employees out of work? Is it because you think they're expensive and complex to deploy? Are you worried that IVA will be really time consuming and complicated and it's only relevant for large enterprise organizations? Or is it because you think virtual agents lack empathy and they lack that human touch? You think they're going to break that personal relationship that you've developed with your customers? Which of these do you think is the biggest reason? So I think we'll give that a couple of moments.
Very interested to see the results coming in again. I think the current leader in the results is quite a common fear, I think, that you get amongst people when you start talking about this type of technology.
Great. Okay, so we do have a clear leader on there again. So are we showing those results?
Yep, the results, everyone can see them.
Brilliant. Okay, so coming out on top, customers prefer to speak to a live agent rather than a virtual agent. So good place to start then. If we move to, you know, the first slide there, James, to tackle that one. I mean, not long ago, I think for most of us, this was probably true. You know, when faced with those frustrating IVR menus and annoying music, we still tended to hang on and zero out, thinking if we can just get through to an agent and describe what we need, that would be the best and quickest way to get help. But it has changed. There will always be times when we need to just speak to somebody, when we've got a complex issue, or we're worried, or we're upset. And I think we should always make it easy for the customer to do so if they want to. But the reality is that typical customer service team, about 70% of the calls are not those types of query at all. They're simple, they're transactional requests. What's my balance? Can you reset my password? When does my policy renew? What time do you open? And for these questions, do customers really prefer to speak to a real person? Would you? I think one thing we really need to recognize is that customer behavior has changed. And in one way, you know, customers have become more demanding. They've become less tolerant of bad service, and they've definitely become less tolerant of waiting. We just want the easiest and quickest way to get things done. So what we really prefer is immediate service and fast response times and fast resolutions. And I think also we're used to engaging on multiple channels, and we expect instant responses. We expect always on capabilities, access to information and service, any device, any time of day. We're very impatient. So no customer really wants to wait in a long queue to speak to someone. And what we're seeing is increasingly, they're going to look for ways to find that information themselves and solve their own problems. So it's not really a surprise. We actually see the stat after years of rejecting self-service. Gartner have now finally reported we have passed that tipping point. Customers now prefer not to have to interact with a person if it's something that they can do themselves. Self-service is actually now our preferred form of service. So at the same time, we're also seeing as a complete shift in how we want to access self-service. So preferring not to open a laptop and log into a customer portal or use a mobile app, but preferring simply to speak, to say what you need. And it's the simplest way as humans for us to communicate. And coupled with, half of all homes have AI-based assistants now, Alexa, Siri, Google. We're becoming very accustomed to using these natural voice-driven interactions on smart home devices and on our smartphones. So there is, I think, a growing realization that this technology really works. It works really well. And as it continually improves and provides brilliant experiences, we're seeing a very sharp rise in speech-driven applications. It's fast overtaking as our chosen way to interact with the organizations that we deal with every day. So virtual agents, I think, are not about forcing people to speak to a machine rather than a person. They're about giving customers that choice. They're giving customers access to that always on service, that fast response time, an easy way to self-serve everyday tasks in a really simple and natural way. And by using IVAs to automate those simple tasks, we can minimize, if not totally remove, those annoying wait times. And meaning when a human is really needed, that IVA can identify it quickly and get them through to the agent without waiting. So I think that, I hope that helped a little bit in dispelling that myth. I think we really have passed that tipping point. So I think quite a few also, hit the button to select this option. So misconception 2, virtual agents will end up replacing human agents. And we get asked this question all the time. Will we need human agents in the future if virtual agents are so capable? And it's a really natural thing to ask, as we often compare virtual agents to human agents because they do a lot of the same things. They greet you, they have a conversation, they get things done for you. So virtual agents, by their definition, they are powered by AI, by artificial intelligence. And this is technology that's designed to mimic human behavior. But there's a fundamental difference between humans and machines. They have got different qualities and they've got quite different skills. So if we think as humans, we communicate with much more than just words. We do understand emotion and feelings, and we use complex language and intonation and sound of our voice. And our brains hold a lot of information about past conversations. Everything we've already learned allows us to have a really deep context around any one particular interaction. And we then communicate in complex ways with that emotion, with that judgment, and with imagination. So while we remain superior in these human qualities, machines are far more superior in other ways. So IVAs can be connected to pretty much any data source out there, and they can access and compute vast amounts of data and information. And they can recall that information really quickly, meaning they can respond to customers with fast, accurate answers to their queries. They can do this far quicker than an agent that's sitting searching through systems and pages and screens trying to find the right detail. So it's really important that we recognise the differences. It's really important that we pick the right agent, whether that's virtual or human, for the right task. So for these high volume, repetitive transactional queries, what's my balance, reset my password, the IVAs are perfectly suited to this. They can surface the correct responses. They can carry out these simple tasks on repeat any time of day. And unlike us humans, they don't get bored, they don't get tired, they don't make mistakes, they don't take breaks, and they don't resign looking for a better job. So for conversations that do need that emotional input, we are always going to be best suited. And with IVA taking away that low value and repetitive tasks, it frees agents up to take more time, take more care, and provide better support for the more emotive customer needs. So I think as we go forward, we see the future as a very close hybrid model between the two. Virtual agents support human agents. They remove that stressful and repetitive workload, and they surface information to them. And humans are needed to support virtual agents. So as we saw, just like real agents, they need training, they need planning for. And so a whole new set of jobs and opportunities actually have been created for agents, promotions and career paths that didn't exist previously. So the future isn't about replacing humans, it's about them working together, a proper collaboration, a hybrid environment that's better for the customers, it's better for agents, and it's better for the business outcomes. So I think IVAs are expensive and complex to deploy. Remind me from the poll, I think this came second. And again, I think, there is the perception that building an IVA is a highly complex, expensive initiative that needs expensive licensing and lots of expensive specialist resources, data scientists, UI designers, coders, programmers. So I think it's quite easy to see why this perception stands, as historically, those of you that know speech applications of the past, these took a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money to build. We first had companies having to sort of buy servers, host those speech recognition and text-to-speech servers, all the licensing that was very expensive. Next, they had to hire that big team of expensive developers to build and train and tune the application. And it could take months, it could take years, and it costs hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it pretty much puts speech out of the reach of all but the largest of the contact centres that we know. And they're also really reliant on those specialist PS resources to make the changes, to add anything new, which was also time consuming and costly. So when we look at new IVA solutions, the new generation of IVAs, this isn't true anymore. There's lots of reasons why we can dispel this myth, I think, today. So first, the IVA solutions are now available fully in the cloud. So they are now at a price point that is suitable for everyone. Gone are the days of this heavy on-prem installation. The running cost of an IVA is typically around 10% of the cost of running a human agent. And it's usage-based. You pay for what you need when you need it. The cost to deploy has also significantly dropped. So if you think about building those speech interfaces, we're now using industry-leading natural language providers, which means that development cycle has completely shrunk because we're using cloud vendors like Google, like IBM, who have trained their recognition servers using massive data sets they've acquired as millions of users interact with their speech services every day. And we can leverage those capabilities, further reducing the cost and the complexity to deploy. And finally, as we can see on the right of the screen here, you now use these low-code, no-code development environments designed to allow real business users to build and management. They're not programmer developer environments. They are feature-rich, graphical user interfaces where they contain all the objects and the tools and the APIs fully built into them, which allow us to continually adapt using these tools, simple to build, simple to design, and we can just add capability as business needs grow. So lots of reasons why, the cost has come down and the complexity to deploy has come down dramatically. And the final one here, so misconception 4, IVAs lack empathy and the human touch. I think quite a few of you chose that as your option. So I think, again, we are really clouded by those bad experiences of the past. While it may be perceived that IVAs push customers further away from the business, they've actually been shown to be one of the strongest and most effective tools to create meaningful relationship with your customer. So when we think about the concept of empathy, it's the ability to share someone else's feelings or imagine what it'd be like to be in that person's situation. Virtual agents can't know how you're feeling, but they can go quite a long way to imagining your state of mind and what you need. And they do that in a few different ways. So first off, accessing data. A virtual agent has the ability to connect to those data sources, has the ability to know who you are, when you last contacted, on which channel, see what you've just purchased, see your policies about to renew, or that you've just missed a payment. And using this information about you, they have the ability to predict what you need and personalize that interaction. And I think when we talk about empathy, I think consumers just want to feel valued. On a basic level, feeling valued to me is not wasting my time. Don't make me wait, don't make me sit in a queue, don't make me repeat information. Use what you know about me and get me to the right place or outcome quickly. And secondly, listening to the customer themselves instead of forcing them down that generic route through the IVR. Just ask them to describe in their own words what they need. And we can listen to the words, but we can also listen to the tone of their voice, and we can detect that sentiment, as James spoke about earlier. And in that way, we can pick out those distressed or upset or vulnerable callers and make sure that we prioritize those and deal with them differently. And last, responding to the customer. When we're talking about conversational design, we can absolutely start adding the feeling of empathy through the way we respond. We can use appropriate language like, I'm listening, or I understand how you feel. And we're using these really amazing synthetic voices now, which we know are, pretty indistinguishable from human voices, but they also have the ability to sort of sound different. So they can sound helpful, or they can sound sympathetic if needed. So through a combination of all of these capabilities, we can go a really long way to make that conversation feel less robotic and make it more understanding and more personal. So lots of ways there that we can use these to create that human touch.
So Annie's just done a fantastic job of kind of going over and hopefully busting some of those myths around implementing IVAs. So we just kind of remind ourselves, that customers prefer speaking to a live agent. Well, no, they're more than happy to speak to a virtual agent if it's faster, if it's smarter, if it offers them self-service options. Worried about what will human agents do in the future? Well, we'll augment human agents. They will draw on the key strengths of both to be able to provide a much better experience overall. IVAs are very much within your reach. Both the kind of to build and the operational costs are much more manageable now than they've ever been in the past. And finally, virtual assistants really can provide a human experience in the way that they can just improve the customer experience overall, but use some of those intelligent capabilities to build meaningful relationships with that customer and understand exactly what it is and how they can be helped. So what we've also done today is we've explored a little bit around what makes an intelligent virtual agent actually smart. We've talked about some of the technical capabilities, but also the impact that those abilities have on the customer experience. Angie gave you a great chance to hear a real IVA in action. And we've kind of talked and explored some of the real benefits that businesses are seeing from deploying IVAs. So you've kind of heard a lot about our thoughts. Final couple of questions really for you in the audience. We'd like to take the time to talk about, for those that already have implemented an IVA that you thought was, an intelligent virtual agent, considering the true breadth of capabilities, how smart do you think your IVA is really when compared against that? Are you just scratching the surface, or are you kind of all in on everything it can do? And for the rest of you, when you think of how customers contact your business today, how intelligent and how personalized, how easy is it for them as things stand? And do you have those very real plans to improve? So yeah, we'd be really interested to kind of hear your thoughts. Feel free to kind of unmute yourselves and just give some examples really of maybe where you are in your own customer experience transformation journey. Have we got anybody brave willing to kind of contribute some thoughts?
Anyone for a live question, or should we take some out of the chat?
I have a few questions. Should we start with those? And then if anyone else would like to join in and ask a live question, please feel free to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. So for the first question we have is, how is voice biometrics data or personal data protected? Is it stored within a bot, or can the bot access other stored protected data sources/services?
So I'm happy to take that one. So it's a combination of things. I mean, in terms of where it gets its data from, that is one of the real key capabilities and differences with an IVA, is the tools that it has to interact with other systems are so much better. And that process is so much easier now than it's ever been in the past. So we can look into all these, CRMs, customer databases, order management systems, and actually build up that profile of that customer. And as for where anything we collect from the customer is stored, it's a combination of some of it can be stored within the those cloud services that we're using to deliver that natural language understanding. So things such as Google Dialogflow or Amazon Lex, etc. You can choose not to, but having that data in there, even just for a short period of time, really helps the tuning process of making sure that you're really understanding that customer. Obviously, that comes wrapped into all the data protection, data privacy, data location guarantees that you need in order to be able to offer that then to your customer. And obviously, it's where those calls then end up in terms of your core kind of platforms and systems.
Yeah, I also have a follow-up question from the same person. So also, how is the information given by the chatbot kept up to date? Is it manually added and updated, or can it draw information from the back end of a website so it updates when content on the website is updated?
Did you want to talk to that one, Angie?
You take that. I've got another one just about.
Right, super. Yeah, so it can be a mixture of both. So there are technologies such as knowledge bases within Google Dialogflow that, one thing Google's really good at is understanding unstructured information. So just being able to point it at a website and have it automatically crawl that website, just as Google does for search, to extract out question and answer pairs and content, and use that to come up with intelligent responses for your chatbot. That's one way of doing it. The other way is embedding that knowledge within the IVA. So almost having the intents to say, if a customer is asking you about this, then here's an appropriate response. And then finally, for complex organizations, it may be that you have or want to introduce a full knowledge management solution, where not only does it have lots of questions and answers held within it, but also everything around that in terms of making sure content is current and up to date and has been recently reviewed. Again, solutions are there to be able to allow that IVA to draw on those sources directly to generate answers to go back to customers.
Nicole, I seem to have quite a few questions that have popped into my direct message stream, so I'll pick up on a couple of those I can see coming in. So first one on here, can an IVA pick up and reply, speak in other languages? So if the guest is not comfortable with using English or actually does not speak English. So yeah, absolutely. Within the virtual agent solution, we support up to, there's around 120 inbuilt languages. So that is understanding those different languages and being able to respond in different voices and different voices. A second question on here is asking, how do different demographics and age groups respond to IVAs? And I was just trying to think through that as it popped in. And this is a really interesting one for me, because I think both ends of the spectrum, are picking up this this natural kind of affinity with these types of capability, with these types of interfaces. If you think about the younger generation, they've grown up with it, having an Alexa in the kitchen and your kids run around speaking to it every day. But at the other end of the scale, through the pandemic, we saw this huge kind of forced digital adoption where, there's a whole kind of sector of society that weren't very comfortable using digital devices at all, let alone speaking to their devices. And that's really shifted recently, in order to communicate with family or friends or get your shopping done or hear what the weather is going to be like. We're, increasingly just speaking to our phone or speaking to our Alexa in our home to do this. So I think it's pretty much across the board. The adoption is rising.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that last point around, there has traditionally been the view that as you get towards older customers and consumers, the preference is there towards picking up the telephone. Well, IVA is a great way of allowing those customers to still have their channel of choice, but also if you do it in the right way, if you do it sensitively and appropriately, actually enabling self-service for those users as well, not excluding them just because they are not necessarily reaching for chat to start off with, but actually extending that into voice as well.
Mm-hmm. Are there other questions there, Nicole?
Yes, I have two more. The second question is, would you recommend allowing attachments to be added to a chatbot chat by customers, or how would this dialogue interact/store this?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I mean, attachments are tricky because they can be so varied that if you've got an intelligent virtual agent on the end of it, it's difficult for it to know how to kind of peer into that and extract out what the relevant bits, that content are, if you want it to respond to the contents of that. However, what we've seen is can be really helpful is even just taking the files themselves. Maybe there's some metadata associated with it that the IVA can respond to, and then almost just taking that and moving it on to maybe a back office process. So an example would be for insurance claims. To start off that claim, it tends to be a fairly kind of straightforward sort of triage process. There's lots of questions to ask. There's maybe photos and evidence to kind of upload. Allowing the IVA to automate some of that process, to start off that claim, to take the picture from the customer and be able to put that against the case file, maybe extract out the location, the date and time, things like that, and then pass that on to the back office to kind of continue that claims handling process. That is saving time from an agent in doing that very repetitive kind of process. And storage wise, again, that ability, it's a very open ability to interact with different systems. So yeah, we'd be able to kind of take those attachments and basically store it where it makes sense. That could just be in a big pool of storage somewhere. It could be on a dedicated, claims handling platform, a CRM platform. We'd be able to put the content where it needs to be, really.
Great. We have time for just one more question. Or Angie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I've got one more question here that's come into mind, is which voices are available on the virtual agent? And yeah, that's another really interesting question. I think when we're talking about building virtual agents within Five9, within our studio environment, we have all of the industry voices in there. So whether they're IBM or Google's voices, and there are hundreds of those to choose from. But when we witnessed the new Hire IVA that we demonstrated earlier on, that's actually a custom voice that we have created. So we went out and found an actor with a voice to become the voice of Five9. We synthesized his voice. He was a chap called Vaughan, and we now use his voice. So his voice is now taken through text to speech, and in any of the responses that he provides is now using his voice. So we have this as a service. You can create your own voice, your own avatar, and it's something we're seeing is really popular at the moment, sort of using voice almost to be as representing your brand. We've seen kind of George Clooney for Nespresso and TV kind of personalities, but Alexa's the biggest example of this. She's got a personality. She is just her voice, and we're seeing a real trend of organizations kind of picking this technology up to really represent their brand and create that sort of brand image. So thank you for that question.
Great. I think that's all the time we have for today. If we didn't get to your question, we will do our best to reply via email after the event. And just one last poll question. If you'd like a personalized demo of Five9 after the event, please take a few seconds to respond to the poll. And we will be sending out a follow-up email with a recording of this event, and also our new Hire IVA resume, where you can try the number yourself. Okay, I'll give it a few more seconds. Thank you to everyone who has replied. And I'm also going to put in the chat, we have our CX Summit EMEA on the 12th of May. Registration is now live, and we'd love for you to come. So if you can find that in the chat section. And we also have, apologies about that, they came together. So that's the link to the CX Summit EMEA. That'll be on the 12th of May at 1 p.m. British Summer Time. And then we also have a link for a survey so we can improve events in the future.
I think
and with that,
content around the CX Summit and the new Hire IVA, we'll ensure they're kind of sent out in case you haven't managed to grab them from the Zoom chat yet.
Yeah, Angie and James will have a session around AI and automation, so you can hear more from them there. And again, thank you, Angie and James, for your expert insights. It's been a pleasure having you both here today. And yeah, we hope to see you at the next event, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.